What if the productivity system you created is causing your anxiety? Have you thought about that? You have the color-coded calendar, you have the planner, you have the digital task manager, the time block schedule, the habit tracker, the morning and the evening routine, and the Sunday reset planned out. You write everything down, you plan your meals, you schedule your tasks, you organize goals into categories. And despite having almost every single detail of your life organized and managed, you still feel overwhelmed. In fact, you may feel more anxious now, even though it seems as though you're more responsible for completing your work, but you're also responsible for maintaining the system designed to help you complete it. If you miss one part of your morning routine, your day feels off. If something unexpected happens, it throws off your entire schedule. If you don't check everything off of your list, you feel as though you failed for the day. And if you stop planning, even for a little while, you feel like your whole life is going to fall apart. At that point, your productivity system is no longer simply a tool. Now it has become a source of your emotional safety. Your planner is not just helping you remember what to do, it's helping you believe that you are in control. Your calendar is not only organizing your routine, it's protecting you from the fear that you might forget something that makes you seem incompetent of doing what you're doing. Do you know it can also make you feel like you are disappointing people, falling behind, or an imposter in your work? And that is what we're talking about on today's episode. Why your productivity system may be keeping you anxious and how to create structure that supports you without controlling you. Welcome back to the Self-Care CEO podcast with Courtney. Here we have honest conversations about burnout, boundaries, emotional wellness, and learning to lead with capacity instead of hustle. Now, before we get into the conversation today, I want to clarify something important. Productivity systems are not inherently bad or unhealthy. Calendars, alarms, planners, checklists, visual reminders, time blocking systems can serve a purpose and be incredibly helpful. But for women with ADHD, executive functioning challenges, demanding careers, caregiving responsibilities, or simply just a lot to manage, external structure can reduce the amount of information that your brain has to hold, which is really what causes you to be so overwhelmed to begin with. So the issue is not whether you use a system. The issue is your relationship with the system that you create. Does structure help you remember what matters, or does it create another standard that you use to judge yourself? Can you adjust your plan without feeling like the entire day is ruined? Can you miss a habit without turning it into some form of evidence that you lack discipline? Can you leave something unfinished without mentally punishing yourself? If not, we may no longer be talking only about productivity. We may be talking about anxiety wearing a productivity costume. Now, today I'm sharing 9 different points or ways to look at productivity and anxiety. Now, if you need your pen and piece of paper, go grab it now because you definitely want to take notes today. Now, let's get into point 1. When productivity can become a safety behavior. Let's get into that. Now, a safety behavior is something a person does to reduce anxiety or prevent a feared outcome. Some safety behaviors are obvious, like avoiding certain situations, constantly seeking reassurance, checking something repeatedly. But safety behaviors can also look like responsibility, discipline, and productivity. But over preparing can be a safety behavior. Rehearsing every possible conversation can be a safety behavior. Arriving excessively early because you can't tolerate the possibility of being late can fall into that category. Planning every hour of your day, making lists for your list can be a safety behavior. So the behavior itself is not necessarily the problem. The question then turns into, what do you believe will happen if you don't do it? And the answer is, I may forget something, so I write it down. That's a practical tool. But if the answer is if I don't plan every detail, I'll lose control, fail, disappoint people, and prove that I'm incapable, then the system is carrying way more emotional responsibility than it needs to. It is not only helping you function, it is helping you manage your fear. The relief it provides can feel real, but it's often temporary. You create the plan and you feel better in the moment. Then you begin worrying about whether you can execute it. So you rearrange it, you add more details, you research an even better system, you purchase another planner, you watch another video about how successful women structure their day. You spend so much time building the ideal routine that you have less available structure and energy to even live your daily life. Planning creates the feeling of movement without requiring the vulnerability of beginning. And because you are technically working on it, the avoidance can be difficult to recognize. Because you aren't lying on the couch ignoring the project, you're actually researching, you're organizing, preparing, creating categories, choosing tools, building a workflow, but you still have not started the thing that makes you feel uncertain. Sometimes planning is productive, but sometimes planning is procrastination that has excellent branding and just wrapped in a bow. The second point I want to point out is why high-achieving women are especially vulnerable. High-achieving women are often rewarded for anxious productivity. You worry about everything that could go wrong, so you prepare for everything. People call you thorough. You're afraid of disappointing others, so you complete tasks early, and you even exceed expectations. People call you dependable, and you don't trust anyone else to do what you can do by yourself because you feel that you can do it more correctly and you can do it the right way. So it seems like you end up doing everything yourself. People call you a leader, so you monitor every detail. You try to anticipate every need before anybody brings it up and prevent any possible problem that could arise. People call you organized. Your behavior receives praise, even when internally you're exhausted. That makes it hard to identify when productivity has crossed over into overfunctioning. From the outside, it looks like excellence, but inside, it feels like if I stop paying attention for 1 minute, everything will fall apart. If I can't relax, then I can't relax until everything is handled. If I don't do it, nobody else will. I have to stay ahead because falling behind would just be too unbearable. I can't make a mistake because people expect more from me. Now, you may not be organizing your schedule solely because you enjoy structure. You may be organizing it because control feels safer than uncertainty. This is particularly more common for women whose lives require them to be highly responsible. Maybe you grew up in an unpredictable environment. Maybe the adults around you were unreliable. Maybe you were responsible for your siblings, household tasks, or other people's emotions at an early age. Maybe mistakes were punished harshly. Maybe your words were connected to being smart, helpful, mature, and easy to manage. Then your organization became more than just a skill. It became your protection. If I can anticipate what's coming, I can prepare. And if I can prepare, I can prevent problems. If I can prevent problems, then I can stay safe. And that strategy may have helped you survive in your childhood and even become successful. But it can also make ordinary uncertainty feel intolerable. The third point, your system can become another standard. A healthy productivity system can become pressure. An anxiety-driven system creates another opportunity to fail. You create a morning routine containing 8 steps. You wake up at 5, you pray or meditate, then you journal, you exercise, you read, you drink your water, you mind your business, you prepare breakfast, you review your goals for the day. Then life happens. You sleep poorly. Your child may wake up sick. A client needs to reschedule. Your energy is low. You complete only 3 out of the 8 steps that you plan for yourself. But instead of recognizing that you adjusted to your actual circumstances, you tell yourself, I have no discipline. I can never remain consistent. I've already messed up my day. Now, you may abandon the entire routine because you cannot execute it perfectly. This is not a planning problem. It is all or nothing thinking. The system revealed the perfectionism that was already present. The same thing happens with time blocking. You schedule a task from 10 until 11, but it takes until 11:20. Now the next block is delayed. The schedule no longer looks clean and your anxiety starts to rise. Instead of using the schedule as a flexible estimate, you treat it like a contract that you violated. You spend the rest of the day trying to catch up to a timeline that may have not been realistic in the first place. A plan is supposed to serve as a guide, but anxiety converts the plan into a moral standard. If you follow it, you're good. If you deviate from it, you're irresponsible. If you complete everything, you're productive. If you need rest, you're lazy. If you remain consistent, you're disciplined. If your capacity changes, then you're making excuses. This is how your productivity system just turns into another instrument of self-criticism. You did not create more freedom. You just gave your inner critic a spreadsheet. Point 4, organization is not the same as capacity. One of the greatest problems with productivity and the culture surrounding it is the idea that everything can fit if you organize it correctly. If your calendar is too full, you need better time management. If you're exhausted, you need a more efficient routine. If you can't keep up, you need to wake up earlier, automate more, eliminate distractions, or develop greater discipline. But organization cannot create unlimited capacity. You can organize 15 hours of responsibility into a 12-hour day, but the math still won't math. You can color code your obligations, but color does not make those obligations less demanding. You can schedule rest in 30-minute segments, but that does not mean 30 minutes is enough. You can track every habit, but tracking does not produce the physical or emotional energy required to maintain them. Sometimes the problem is not your system is ineffective. The problem is that you are carrying too much. No productivity system can compensate indefinitely for a life that exceeds your capacity. This is why some high achieving women continue switching systems. They believe the next planner, routine, app, or technique will finally help them manage everything. But they have not stopped to ask themselves whether everything needs to be managed. Maybe the solution is not organizing the responsibility. Maybe the solution is releasing it, delegating it, delaying it, reducing it, renegotiating it, or admitting that it never belonged to you or on your list in the first place. A productivity system can tell you when to do something, but it cannot determine whether the thing deserves your energy. That requires values, boundaries, and discernment. Point 5, I hope you're keeping up with your pen and paper. ADHD, overthinking, and the shame of not functioning. I think it's important to address the shame that women experience when you feel unable to function despite being intelligent and accomplished. You may know exactly what needs to be done and still have difficulty beginning. You create the perfect plan, but still unable to follow it. You may concentrate intensely on one task while forgetting 3 others. You may be highly productive under pressure, but struggle when no deadline exists. You alternate between hyperfocus and complete exhaustion. You may have even been told, you have so much potential, you just need to apply yourself. You're too smart to be this disorganized. Or, you can't have ADHD. Look at everything you've accomplished. But accomplishment does not rule out difficulty. Sometimes the accomplishment came from developing intense coping strategies. You may have used anxiety to generate enough urgency to act. You may have overworked to compensate for forgetfulness. You may have developed perfectionism because mistakes felt dangerous. You may have relied on last-minute adrenaline because starting early just felt impossible. You may have hidden the amount of effort required to produce the result. External structure can be genuinely supportive in these situations. Using alarms, calendars, body doubling, written instructions, visual cues, timers, and simplified routines is not failure. You do not need to prove that you can hold everything in your head. The goal isn't even to eliminate the tools that help you. The goal is to remove the shame and rigidity from your relationship with those tools. Now, a supportive system says, this reminder helps my brain, but anxiety says, if I need a reminder, then something is wrong with me. A supportive system says, I'll estimate how long this may take and adjust if necessary. Perfectionism says, if it takes longer than planned, then I failed. A supportive system says, I need fewer steps so I can follow through. But shame says, I should be able to handle a more demanding routine. You do not need a system that proves how disciplined you are. You need one that accommodates how you actually function. Moving on to point number 6. Let's get into 5 signs that your system may be feeding your anxiety. The first sign is that planning takes more energy than doing. You spend hours selecting, organizing, rearranging, or perfecting the system, but still feel unable to begin. The second sign is that minor changes cause major distress. One delay, interruption, or unexpected request makes the entire day feel off and ruined. The third sign is that unfinished tasks feel more like personal failures. You can't simply move a task to another day. You experience shame, anxiety, or harsh self-criticism. The fourth sign is that rest must be earned through completion. You don't allow yourself to stop until everything is done, and even even though everything is never fully done. The fifth sign is that the system ignores your actual capacity. Your schedule reflects everything you wish you could accomplish, not what your body and mind can responsibly sustain. If you recognize yourself in any one of those 5 signs that I stated, you don't necessarily need to throw away your planner. You may need to change what your planner is allowed to mean. Your planner is really a tool. It is not a report card of your worth. Point number 7. This is what you need to do instead. Now, I really need y'all to make notes on this one. How do you create structure without using structure to control your anxiety? First, create a minimal viable day. Instead of designing a perfect day containing every habit you believe will be healthy or a successful woman should perform, identify what makes the day functional. What absolutely needs attention? What supports your body? What is the one meaningful priority? Your minimal viable day might include taking medication, eating, completing one work priority, and preparing for tomorrow. Everything else is additional. This protects you from interpreting a lower capacity day as a failed day. Second, use flexible anchors instead of rigid routines. An anchor is something that gives your day shape without controlling every minute. You may have a morning anchor, a work anchor, and an evening anchor. Your morning anchor may be medication, water, prayer, and reviewing your day. Your work anchor may be identifying your top priority before opening email. And your evening anchor may be preparing one thing for tomorrow and choosing when your workday ends. Your anchor creates more structure while leaving room for real life and things that actually pop up. Third, separate your master list from your daily capacity. Your master list contains everything that eventually needs your attention. Your daily list should contain only what you can realistically address today. Do not use the existence of 20 tasks as evidence that all 20 belong in one day. Select one primary task, 2 secondary tasks, and a few small maintenance items, if your capacity allows. And I would even say, even in you prioritizing your list, with that, prioritize it from most important to least important, because not everything that we make urgent is really an emergency. We just add the unnecessary pressure on ourselves when we don't have to. So even in prioritizing items on your day, prioritize it from most important to least important, and that takes the pressure off too. Because your daily plan should reflect your available energy, not simply just a number of demands competing for your energy. Fourth thing to keep in mind, schedule margin before you schedule more work. If every minute is a sign, one unexpected event can destabilize your entire day. Leave room between your appointments. Create a transition time. Assume some tasks will take longer than expected. Do not treat every available space as unused productivity. White space is not wasted time. It is what allows the rest of the schedule to remain functional for yourself. Fifth, decide what enough really means before you begin. An anxious mind will continue finding things to improve. Set a stopping point for yourself. How much time will you spend? What outcome is sufficient? What does a completed version look like? When will you stop? Even if you can imagine additional work, done has to be defined, or perfectionism will continue moving the finish line. 6, practice intentional imperfection. Send the email after reviewing it twice instead of 10 times. Complete the routine out of order. Leave one low priority task for tomorrow without apologizing to yourself. Allow your calendar to change. Choose the simpler option. This is not about becoming careless. It is about teaching your nervous system that imperfection does not automatically create disaster. Seventh, conduct a capacity check before accepting another commitment. Do not ask only, can I fit this into my schedule? Ask, do I have the emotional, mental, physical, and relational capacity to carry this? An empty hour does not always represent available capacity. And I often tell my clients, my availability does not make me your accessibility. Just because I have time available does not mean that my time is accessible to you. It's just my time that's available, and I can choose whatever it is I want to do with that. So you may need that hour to recover from 3 meetings that you scheduled before it. Time availability and human capacity are not the same thing. So always keep that in mind. The last and final point is point 8, is creating a productivity system built around trust. Ultimately, this conversation is really about self-trust. Anxiety says, I have to anticipate everything because I will not be able to cope if something unexpected happens. Self-trust says, I can make a plan and I can also respond when the plan changes. It's called pivoting. Anxiety says, if I do not control every detail, something will go wrong. Self-trust says, something may go wrong and I can decide what to do next. Anxiety says, I need the perfect system before I begin. Self-trust says, I can begin with the information and capacity that I have right now. Anxiety says, if I slow down, I will fall behind. Self-trust says, my body is part of the plan, not an obstacle to it. You do not need to build self-trust by creating a life in which nothing unexpected ever happens. You build it by experiencing changes, mistakes, delays, uncertainty, and imperfect days, and discovering that you can respond without abandoning yourself. The goal is not to become a person who never needs structure. The goal is to become a person who can use structure without becoming emotionally dependent on perfect execution. Your calendar can help you remember. Your planner can help you prioritize. Your alarm can help you transition. Your checklist can help reduce the mental load. But none of those tools should determine whether you are allowed to feel competent, disciplined, or worthy. So if your productivity system is keeping you anxious, you may not need a more sophisticated system. You may need a simpler one. You may need fewer priorities, more margin, more honest expectations, more support, more flexibility, and more compassion for the way your brain and body actually function. You may also need to confront the possibility that your system has been helping you organize a life that contains too much. Because you cannot plan your way out of every capacity problem. You cannot time block your way out of an unstable workload. You cannot habit track your way out of emotional depletion. You can't color code your way into feeling safe. And you cannot create enough structure to eliminate every form of uncertainty. Your productivity system should help you participate in your life. It should not become another job you have to perform perfectly. It should create clarity, not shame, direction, not control, support, not self-punishment. You are allowed to use tools. You are allowed to use reminders. You're allowed to organize your day. But you are also allowed to change the plan if needed. You are allowed to have a low capacity day. You're allowed to leave something unfinished. You are allowed to decide that everything on your list does not deserve equal access to your energy. And you are allowed to build a life that works with your brain instead of constantly punishing yourself for not functioning like someone else. So let me leave you with this. A healthy system helps you trust yourself more. An anxiety-driven system convinces you that you cannot function without controlling everything in it. The goal is not to perfectly manage every minute of your life. The goal is to remain connected to yourself while you decide what deserves your time. If this conversation resonated with you, tell me in the comments, does your productivity system support you? Or have you started supporting your system? Share this episode with a woman who owns every planner that you can imagine, has tried every routine, and still wonders why she feels overwhelmed. And subscribe for more conversations about burnout, boundaries, overthinking, emotional wellness, and choosing capacity over hustle. Until next time, remember, you may not need a better system. You may need permission to stop treating yourself like a problem that needs to be managed. Until next time, see y'all later.